This week on the Destination Angler.
And often if I've landed a big fish, I'm replacing that bottom couple of sections of tippet as well.
Oh, you are? Why's that?
Well, because knots get stressed when you've been putting max pressure on them. Knots get stressed, and I don't want to break a fish off on the next one because I've stressed them out for too long. But you're going for big fish, high stakes. You don't want to lose a fish, because you were lazy on changing your knots. And I always say to my clients that if you want to become a better angler, you treat every single bit of water you're going to fish or every single fish you see with a completely clean slate.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Trout Routes, the #1 fishing app, helping you find new trout waters so you spend less time on the road and more time doing what you love, trout fishing. And by Anglers Coffee, elevating the coffee experience for the fly fishing community everywhere with small batch coffee delivered to your doorstep. That's Anglers Coffee. It's darn near perfect. And by J.P. Ross Fly Rods, makers of happiness, one rod at a time. Get outside and simply fish. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we're headed to Idaho's Silver Creek, which is one of the finest spring creeks in the world. Then we're headed to Montana and the world-famous Madison River. You won't want to miss these shows, and be sure to hit that subscribe button to catch all the Destination Angler podcasts coming your way. And please share with a buddy. And today, our destination is the rugged and beautiful South Island of New Zealand. And our guest is expert backcountry fly angler and celebrity guide Mike Kirkpatrick, owner of Latitude Guiding, Nelson, New Zealand. New Zealand is the land of the giants, where 5-pound browns cruising in gin-clear waters are the norm and encounters with 10 to 15-pounders are a reality. Could this be the finest sight fishing on the planet? You be the judge. Mike has been fishing and guiding these waters for 35 years, specializing in backcountry 4x4 hiking and in helicopter trips. He has appeared in various local and overseas magazines and videos and is currently a writer and photographer for New Zealand's premier fly fishing magazine, Fish and Game. And you should see his photographs, man. They are absolutely stunning. As Mike likes to say, these are postcard trips you only dream about, trips of a lifetime that will take your breath away. Mike gives us the full download on the fly fishing opportunities on the South Island, including the famous mouse hatch and their unique stream etiquette rules, and a masterclass on how to land giant trout on thin tippets. Hey, and be sure to check out my Instagram and Facebook pages for some pretty amazing pictures Mike sent me. We're talking drop-dead gorgeous scenery and giant trout like you've never seen, including a shot of his personal best, an 18-pound beast of a brown trout. And check out Mike's YouTube channel for videos of these amazing trophy fish. Are the stories about New Zealand true? Well, you're going to find out here in a minute. All I can say is that New Zealand is now top of my exotic destination list. No kidding. Well, Mike, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Steve.
Yeah, all the way from New Zealand. Man, I'm super excited about this because I actually polled my listeners through Instagram, and it was like 97% of them said they wanted to hear about New Zealand. So super excited to have you on the show. So right now, your seasons are opposite of ours here in North America. So what you're in the middle, it's April for us here, and you're in the middle of your fall season, correct?
Yeah, we call it autumn, but yeah, it's probably about a month to go of our season, and then it closes off to protect the spawning fish.
Okay. How's the fishing season been for you?
Look, different because New Zealand's closed off, but we're so isolated. We've sort of closed off our borders to protect ourselves from this stupid virus that's been running around.
Yeah.
So it's a lot different look because we've obviously there's a lot of international tourist anglers that come here every year, and without them, certainly the fishing's been a lot less crowded. But also guys like myself are pretty struggling a little bit, with only having local guys to fish with.
Right. And when does it open up again?
Yeah, we're opening up to Australian anglers, being our close sort of over the ditch cousins, in about a week's time, actually. And then I think the rest of Europe and a lot of other places will start to open up in the next month or two.
Oh, very good. Okay, wonderful. When can Americans come down? Any idea?
I think our next season, October, should be absolutely no problem at all. I think it'll be open before then. So we've got a full board of bookings right through my own company and my wife's. She runs another 12 guides, and so I've got plenty of work for those guys as well.
Oh, wonderful. Well, glad to hear it. Well, let's talk about New Zealand. So, what is it about New Zealand? I mean, it's got such an incredible reputation around the world for being just an amazing fishery. How can you kind of describe New Zealand and why it's such an amazing place for fly anglers?
I'll go back a step, and I've heard a lot of people say over the years, "Oh, New Zealand's the greatest fly fishing destination in the world, for trout," and it's probably not. Certainly in numbers, the States would probably have that, and a lot of other places around the world as well, for sheer numbers of fish. But the backdrop that you're fishing and the weather and the clarity of the water and the size of the fish combined make it, I think, easily the greatest sight fishing for large brown and rainbow trout fishing in the world.
Okay. Gotcha. And it's beautiful too, right? I mean, can you kind of describe the North and the South Island? It's about the size of Colorado. I looked it up for American listeners that I have, but it's divided into two big land masses, right? The North and the South Island.
That's right. Yeah, there's a little tiny one called Stewart Island off the bottom, but it's not really an issue for trout fishing. But
Okay.
it is picture postcard fishing, and you don't get an ugly destination in New Zealand for trout. You really don't. I mean, they are jaw-droppingly gorgeous. You've got massive, but for the size of the country, it's a bit similar topographically to sort of Japan. Very high mountain peaks. Specifically the South Island, there's a big long range that runs down the spine of the length of the South Island, which is quite a long, thin landmass.
Yeah.
And very tall mountains, snow-capped all year round through the centre, and gorgeous beach forested backdrops through every river just about. And there's a lot of variety too. You also have the freestone rivers, the braided ones that run across the plains that run down towards the sea, especially on the eastern side of the South Island. And so they're more open riverbeds, braided and wild, but they're all absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, no kidding. What's your climate like?
Yeah, it's quite temperate. It doesn't get really cold in winter. I mean, you're talking Celsius, about -5 or 6 would be about the lowest, and gets up about
Okay.
the mid-30s at its highest. I'm not sure how to translate that to Fahrenheit, but it's a lovely climate. A bit like somewhere like the south of France, probably.
Okay. That sounds great. And you're on the north end of the South Island, correct?
Yeah, I'm based in Nelson, which is at the tip of the South Island, so a good sort of central place to be able to hit both the North and South Islands if we want to. But the North
Okay.
Island is predominantly a rainbow fishery. It's certainly a lot more rainbows than there are in the South Island. South Island is very much predominantly a brown trout fishery.
Okay. And so I imagine that these trout were stocked many, many years ago. What's the story on that? How did that come about?
Yeah, they liberated through a guy who brought them across to Australia, actually, believe it or not.
Oh,
And
really?
I think
Huh.
our rainbows come from, I think, Sonoma Creek, which is in the States. And you'd have to probably add the exact location.
Yeah.
Thinking somewhere around California, but I might be wrong. I think the Russia River, and their brown trout came out of the UK.
Oh, nice. And that was what? Turn of the century, like late 1800s?
About 150 odd years ago, just over
Okay.
150 years. And I think that it worked out quite well in that the species are sort of adronomous. I think, which means they run to the ocean. They had that strain in them, so almost a
Yeah.
sea run brown trout type strain. So they were happy once they're populated in some rivers to run out to the ocean and then repopulate the rest. So a lot of it's a very natural repopulation.
Oh, that's great. Well, can you kind of break down the South Island for us? Like, how do you think about it? The different sections that anglers ought to be thinking about.
Well, the top of the south, where I live in Nelson's, probably got the best climate in the country. Very Mediterranean, the highest sunshine hours in the country almost every year.
Ah,
not a lot of wind. We're protected by what we call the Western Ranges. There's a mountain range that comes around to the west of us, which protects us from the weather that comes in from the Tasman. And lovely fishing, gin clear water, beautiful beach forested backdrops. The classic, pool run sort of riffle sort of water, and large brown trout. And some of the rivers, in certain sections, averaging almost up around the 6-7 pound mark in weight. And then you can get some, and trophy fish, we call trophy fish over 10 pound in weight in New Zealand. And there's enough of those to satisfy the trophy angler. And then that sort of, and you morph out and you go to the West Coast. West Coast fishery is a bit more wild and rugged, a lot of rainfall, shorter, sharper, steeper catchments, and more slightly tannin stained water often there. So it's sort of almost tea coloured but still clear. It's like tea without milk in it.
Okay, gotcha.
And then you've got the Canterbury region, which is south of that, which is there's a lot of quite high mountain ranges through the top, the west of Canterbury Plains, and then those rivers run down through the plains, become sort of alluvial braided rivers, head right out to the coast, and they offer all sorts of fishing to the interconnected sort of spring creeks that come in places, little hidden gems like that, to everything you can think of. Farmland spring creeks, little meandering ones that go through tussock flats. It's got everything. And of course the lakes. I mean, there are plenty of lakes through Canterbury as well.
All right. What's your public access? What are those laws like in New Zealand?
Well, we run a thing called the Queen's Chain, which is sort of a 30-metre marginal strip along any waterways, with a few exceptions. So the public can access, as long as there's a fishing game access point, or you get permission from a farmer, you can access any of those spots you want.
Okay. So people could come to New Zealand and go knock on some doors or just go out and start fishing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the Fishing Game New Zealand here, which administers and looks after the fisheries, has done a really good job about, putting access on and many access points on every river, almost every river that's fishable and it's worth fishing for trout.
Huh.
The caveat to that is that there are some private waterways. When I say private, very few, there's only a few percent, that the landholders own a riparian right, they call to.
Okay.
And this means that they actually own the river right down to the centre of the river. And if they own the property on both sides, they basically own that section of river. And then it's up to them in negotiations through Fishing Game as to whether they allow public access or not. But there's very few of those.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And then you've been fishing this area for 35 years, like I said in my intro. And I'm wondering, how much fishable water is there? Like, have you seen most of it already? I mean, how busy can I be fishing New Zealand? I'm assuming very.
Yeah, look, I mean, like I've been fishing for actually almost 40 years now around New Zealand. And I don't think that I'm going to have covered more than about a quarter of what I could fish before I die.
Oh my gosh.
And I try every year to fish 2 or 3 new waters. I love the exploration. I love seeing new things, but also my old favourites, which I love to go to. So, and obviously, I have to fit that in around the guiding.
Okay.
It's difficult to explain to people just how much water there actually is here, and no matter how many tourist anglers might come in the busy periods, you're never going to have a problem bumping into other people with a little bit of forethought. As in, like, if you turn up at a spot and there's a car there, you just move further. And it's 20 minutes drive and you're in a new place and there's no one going to be there. I've never had in my life ever a point where I went out for a day's fishing and couldn't find an access point that was free or a river that was completely free.
That's great news. That's fantastic. And you were telling me when we talked a couple of weeks ago that people will leave little notes on their cars saying, hey, this is where I'm headed. And so you can go the other way. Yeah.
And I think that this is a good etiquette, honesty and etiquette-based system here that is sort of promoted a lot by Fishing Game, and most, thankfully, anglers that come from overseas buy into that very quickly and understand, and most of them have a good attitude about asking locally, even in fly fishing shops, what am I supposed to do or what's expected of me? Because here, because we have few fish, you can't, like in a lot of places, like, it's like combat fishing in the States, for example, in places where it's wall-to-wall fishing, or there's drift boats going past every few minutes. They can handle that because you might have 5,000 or 10,000 fish per kilometre. Here, we might have 5 fish a kilometre, and they might be 6-7 pounds in weight, and they're sitting in the middle of a pool just hanging there like suspended under glass. If you walk ahead of that fish or you fish to it, that fish goes down, he's gone for the day.
Yeah.
So if you're in behind another angler, you're probably not going to see much. And if you do see anything, it's probably going to be well spooked and almost impossible to catch. So we tend to have, we run a system where we have beats, and they'll be from an access point, fishing game access point, to the next one might be 4 or 5 kilometres. And if you turn up, there's no one there. It's very likely, if everyone's followed the rules, that you won't have to see anyone until you get to the next access point.
Huh. So I was in Colorado last summer and came across this really incredible app called Trout Routes. If you've ever looked for a good map to help you with anything from public access to finding the best trout streams in a given area, I highly recommend checking out Trout Routes. Trout Routes has mapped out every stream by state with very detailed access maps for every stream, and they have over 15 different map layers with hundreds of thousands of access points. They also have local fly shops, the ability to take notes, and even local stream regulations, and you can download maps for offline use. Today, Trout Routes covers 23 states, including Montana, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, West Virginia, and more. And they will be adding 10 more states this year, including states like Utah and New York. So if you have an upcoming trip or looking to explore nearby streams, I suggest you check out Trout Routes today on your Apple or Android phone. Don't leave home without it. Hey anglers, are you looking for a darn near perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Then do yourself a favor and check out anglerscoffee.com. That's right, Anglers Coffee is made by anglers for anglers, delivered to your doorstep, one batch at a time. They start with the very best coffee beans selected for their great flavor and responsible growing methods. Then each batch is roasted fresh daily, and the result is a wide selection of roast styles and coffees that will satisfy the most discerning coffee lover. And you gotta love these names: Willie's Blend, Caddis Blend, Brookie's Roast, Muddler's Blend are just a few of the deep, bold, and rich flavors you can enjoy every day. And a percentage of each sale goes to some great nonprofit organizations that directly impact the fly fishing community. So head on over to anglerscoffee.com to check out their great selection of coffee and the organizations they support. And if you're not 100% satisfied, they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. That's Anglers Coffee. It's darn near perfect. So why is that, Mike? Why are there so few fish per kilometer and they're so huge? What's going on there that's causing that to happen?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Steve. I've actually looked into it when I was on the executive committee of my Guides Association. I looked into a lot of this stuff to try and give answers to members and the public and everything else, and just to try and sort out a few things that we were working out with how to educate the public and international anglers about how to go about it,
Yeah.
And the question kept coming up about, why can't we go ahead? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? From foreign anglers, even people, my clients. And I'd say, look, they're very sensitive here, and they're sensitive because the water quality is so good. You step ahead of a fish and it's going to spook, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, when they are in that big pool and it's so clear and so pristine, they know when another fish turns up, for example, and they'll hold that position in that pool jealously, and they'll fight. So they drive other fish out. So in the smaller headwaters, the really fragile fisheries and the ones that a lot of people want to go to, you'll see very few fish because of the fact that they're very territorial. So the same reason is why if you walked ahead of a fish and you crossed over in front of it, the scent would put that fish down for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So it's I guess I'm trying to say it's a very sensitive fishery, and it's very open to any influence. And the other part of that, to answer the question, is that because it's so clear and there's so low nutrients in the water, it doesn't hold a huge population of insects. And so there's only enough food there to sustain a certain amount of fish, certainly in the upper reaches. Now, when you get into the middle and lower reaches, when they're bigger, of course, there's going to be more fish. but generally of a sort of smaller average size.
Right.
And of course, also to add to that, the further you get down in the system, the more you're going to get the influences of farms and get algae and things like that, which in lower amounts isn't too bad because it adds nutrients in the river. And
Yeah.
there's more algal growth and more algal life. And then, of course, you've got more food for the nymphs to live on. And of course, then those populations build up and there's more trout. But certainly the real blue ribbon stuff where everyone wants to go and fish to these really big fish, there's not that many per kilometre.
Right. And do you get to the point where you kind of know, okay, there's a nice one in this pool, and then I know the next pool, there's another nice one. You kind of get to know these fish a little bit?
Yeah, like there's Harry, there's Sam, yeah. Yeah, a little bit. Like a place I'm going actually in a few days, I'm doing a heli trip with a couple of Kiwis. And there's a particular pool there where over the course of 7 years, we caught the same fish 6 times. And because you obviously hold them up for a quick photograph once to release them. And with the photographic evidence I've got, you can look at the fish and go, yeah, I recognise it anyway, generally.
Yeah.
It will be anywhere between sort of maybe the bottom of the pool and the top of the head of the run at the top, which maybe spans 60 metres. And that's been in there, I know I've been in for 7 years because we'd caught it over that period 6 times that I documented either myself, my friends or my clients.
How big has that fish gotten over 7 years?
Actually, it was 7 pounds the first time we caught it. It got as big as 7.5. Last time it was 6 3/4.
Okay.
So it stayed pretty similar. So I think they grow quite quickly, and within 2 or 3 years, that fish could be similar size to that. And then the brown trout will live here to about 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe even 12 years if it's lucky. So that fish will be getting towards the end of its life, I'd imagine, by now.
I was going to say, it doesn't really get any bigger once it gets to a certain size there, it sounds like.
Well, that one, no. It depends. But then, of course, you introduce a new food source like mice, for example, and we're a beech tree seed around about 7 years. But with climate change, that's narrowing down, and there's a lot more mouse ears now because our beech trees seed. And when they drop their seeds, they drop them in their billions, and the mice go crazy. Then you've got 1,000 times the amount of mice. They're crossing the rivers to find more food and become available to trout. Trout start eating them, and then they can double their weight. So hypothetically, if that happened and that fish was maybe a 9-year-old fish at 7 pounds, it could be within the course of 4 months, it could be 13 pounds.
Oh, really?
They can grow that quick. Yeah, they can double their body weight in 4 or 5 months.
Because of the mouse hatch, basically.
Yep.
Every 5 years. Oh my gosh.
It's basically like steroids. You imagine the thing called benthic value, but it's about how much protein you can derive from your food source. And it's not just weight, because one mouse is a lot of weight, but it's also pure protein as opposed to, sort of an insect which largely sort of exoskeleton and sinew, and there's not a lot of pulp in there.
Huh. Are you fishing those? Is it a nighttime hatch? Like here, hatch. This is not the right word, but you know what I mean. Like you usually fish mice patterns at night. Is the same thing in New Zealand, or can you catch them in the middle of the day on a mouse?
I actually produced a couple of movies actually about the mouse here, and which are on Vimeo. And the first one I actually catch a fish just before dark, and it was my digital scales crapped out on me, but it was around about the 18+ pound mark, and we were guessing at the time as how heavy it was. It bombed out the bottom of the 14 pound weigh net, but that was just before dark, and that was one of the first I've ever caught. I think one other time I've caught a fish during the day on a mouse. It's not the fish aren't there and not eating them; they just won't eat them during the day for some reason. It's strange.
Yeah.
But at night, on a dark moonless night, you can have the most incredible experiences you'll ever have in your life if you hit the right time, the right place, and skating big mouse patterns on the surface.
Okay. Wow. What's your favorite mouse pattern?
One of my own ties. It's and there's a real, for me, it's a very subtle art in getting the pattern to sit down far enough in the water, and the lower half of the mouse to sit back almost underwater, which is how they actually swim. Because the surface patterns, which are all deer here, which sit right up on the surface, will still get hit. So I think that after a while, and certainly with the really big cagey fish, they know exactly what they're looking at, and they won't take them, or they'll hit them with their tails. They'll lift them with their heads, flick them out of the water. You'll hear a big splash, but you won't connect. But there's a certain pattern that I've got that sits down lower in the surface film, and it's got a wiggling action, and that will get a lot of hits.
No kidding. So you're saying like the head is up, just like a mouse is trying to breathe the air, and its rear end is hanging lower in the water?
A little bit lower. It's dead right, yeah.
Huh. No kidding. That's fascinating.
There's a lot of fly development in that, I can tell you.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah, that sounds like you got that down to a science.
Hi, everybody. This is JP of JP Ross Fly Rod Company. We love listening to Steve and his guests, and we hear over and over again how much people love fishing small streams and the magic and tranquility that they get from being on the water on these small streams. Well, it's inspired us so much that we make fly rods for small stream fly fishing, and we've been doing it for 25 years. We make fly rods as short as 5-foot 3-weight 3-piece called our rock hopper. We make rods out of E-glass, S-glass, carbon, and carbon fiber hybrid. Check us out at jprossflyrods.com. And do me a favor, send us an email and tell us why you love fly fishing small streams so much. We'll send you a gift of a sticker pack or hat, and we'll even give you a discount code for listening to the Destination Angler podcast. We sure do appreciate your time listening to this ad. Check us out at jprossflyrods.com.
All right, so these fish get big fast, but I still think you'd see 10, 12, 14-inch fish every now and then. Maybe you're walking through a pool? Aren't you, spooking some different size fish, or is it just these big fish everywhere?
Well, it's a really good question. You do see smaller fish, that are, I guess, 6 inches long, which out of very thin little riffles as you're walking through, they'll scoot away. You don't really see them. They're sort of tucked in. But
Yeah.
you only see them when they scoot off. But once they get a bit bigger than that, they head down the lower reaches. Otherwise, they will just get eaten. They're there because they've hatched in there, and they're just getting to a big enough size where they can start to migrate down. Because the big browns will eat them if they hang around for too long.
Sure, that makes sense. So if there's a big brown in a pool, there's not going to be any little fish in that pool. No,
because I think once they're progeny are born and they're off, then they're fair game. It's like, Dad, what are you doing? Chomp.
Right.
So they'll take off in a hurry, yeah. But usually about sort of the 6-inch long mark. It's about when we stop seeing them at that size. So I assume then they've just headed off downstream.
Okay, well, it's starting to make a little more sense. And so was I right in my intro where like 7 pounds is like an average size trout for you?
Well, no, just in some areas. I mean, certainly there's a couple of rivers around Nelson where in the upper reaches that's right. But the average size for the region would be, the average sort of mature fish would be sort of 5 pounds, something like that.
5. Okay.
And one of our local rivers, the Motueka River, which runs through this sort of, from the foothills just ahead of Nelson, right through towards a little township called Motueka. That river is probably the best hatch-driven fishery.
Okay.
And that has probably 150 to 200 fish per K, up to 400 fish per K in a good year in some sections. And for us, that's a well-stocked fishery. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it pales compared with some of the American rivers, which have maybe 10,000 fish per kilometre.
Yeah. No, I've always heard that about New Zealand, that it's sight fishing and there's not as many fish, but the ones you're seeing are big. And it sounds like a lot of fun, though. So, and you've got to move, it sounds like, right? You've got to go from pool to pool. And so you're always kind of on the move. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when you mention pool to pool, a lot of people do that, and it's probably not the best way to go about it. I find, especially as the summer progresses, a lot of fish are going to be in the faster water for the extra oxygen needs, especially when it gets warm. And the pool fish are very hard to catch. I mean, if I see a big bruiser in the middle of a glassy pool, I'm having to go down to even 6x 4 pound fluorocarbon on a 22 to 24 foot leader.
Oh my gosh,
because
really?
They won't tolerate, as soon as that tick of heavier tippet lands on the water, they're gone. And you have to find ways to get ahead of them, lead them by a long way, even just like a little soft tackle by itself, get it, even though there's almost no weight, get it 15 to 20 feet ahead of the fish, get it down, just drifting very naturally and very slowly till it gets maybe a foot or two down to where the fish is going to see it. You have to go to those extremes to catch those fish sometimes, and even give the fly a couple of wee pulses to get a bit of movement to get it interested,
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you may skip the pools or maybe not that's not how you're making your living. It sounds like you're getting into some fast water where the fish have some, water over the top of them that protects them a little bit.
Yeah, well, as soon as you get some moving water, the fish obviously their window, they're not able to see us as well as as we can see them now. It's the sort of table shifted a little bit. Depends on the depth of water. If a fish is in shallow, fast water, and there's quite a bit of texture over the top of the caused by the rocks on the bottom, then you can almost walk up on them.
Oh, cool.
You can almost be standing side on, over them and put casts in. But as soon as that's glassy water and they're a bit deeper, their window opens up, and if you stick your head out behind a bush from 30 meters away, they can see you.
Okay.
So I think the big key for that is identifying the water you're fishing and how to approach that water, and you've got to understand what the trout's window is, which is a massive part, and I think an underrated part of the New Zealand angling experience is actually learning what fish actually see and how they see, and how to make sure that you stay out of that view.
Okay. So that when you say trout's window, that's what you're talking about. Like, can they see you? Are you in his window?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, from their view, what do you think they can see? And I've actually, believe it or not, laid on the bottom of different sections of water in a river on my back. I remember lying. My mate was laughing at me, but I actually got down, took all my gear off from my leggings, and lay down in the river and held myself down on rocks and looked up, and I got him to walk up and down the bank.
Really?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And to what I could see, and I also did that in a pool. And when I was in a pool with glassy water, as soon as he moved, I picked him up instantly.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a little bit to my obsession when I was younger about learning as much as I could about the sport, because that taught me a hell of a lot. And I understood really quickly then what it took and what we needed to do. That goes to another really interesting little anecdote I've got about what actually trout see.
Yeah.
There's a little river between Nelson and a little town called Blenheim, which is called the Rye River. And it's a farmlet sort of stream with rainbows and brown trout. I got to a little bit with a client. There's a little knoll that came over, and the river sort of meandered its way through. And then I was looking down through the trees, really low down. I saw there's 3 rainbows in there feeding. Now there were sheep dancing around on the bank. Some cattle saw us, spooked over the hill and down. The fish didn't bat an eyelid. They carried on feeding beautifully, rising, elevating in the column, feeding really comfortably. We walked up. I stuck my head around a bush, and all 3 bolted. So there is something that I can't explain that fish noticed that my head coming around a bush spooked them, where sheep running around and cattle running over the bank didn't spook them. So you explain to me why those trout knew I was danger. I can't explain it, but that happens.
Yeah, that's great. I did a show with a guy on the Green River, and he's a wildlife photographer, right? And he said that like glare off of sunglasses, lenses off your camera, there's all kinds of things, and he just has to sit there for a long time until the fish get used to him being there. I have no idea what scared him in your case, but I thought that was super interesting. Just even like he's got a nice camera, he takes the lens cap off, and all of a sudden that glass creates some glare. I don't know, but smart trout.
Look, absolutely. What you say, there's a lot in what you say, exactly right. But in this case, it was just my head,
just
looking over, and maybe it was the sunglasses, It could well have been, but I've seen it so many times where they just, maybe next time I'll take my sunglasses off and try and see if I can not be spooked. But, yeah.
So how important is, it sounds like accurate casting, like you said, getting ahead of the trout. Sounds like that'd be really important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, approach is massive in New Zealand. And, talked about already about leader length. I start at 18 feet. And how I construct my leaders is really important, and I've got it down to a pretty fine art over the years. But a lot of people say 18 feet's ridiculous. Well, that's a start point, and we finish up at 22, 23, even 24 feet sometimes.
Wow.
But obviously, you have to have the ability to construct the leader so it turns over well, and then you can a controllable amount of slack at the end, so you get a great drag-free drift.
Yeah.
But approaching fish with that system has its challenges in that if you get close to fish, enough to avoid drag, then you've basically got no fly line out of the rod tip if you've got such a long leader.
Cast. Right.
So what we do is we've developed a system which I call fly loading. So it's loading the rod tip with the fly. It's a very fast, very ugly type of action. But all of my regular clients that I've guided over the years all use the system now and use it really successfully. So we get in close as we can, avoid drag, and drop the cast in and high stick through sort of Euro nymphing style.
Yeah, I was going to say. So you're casting, at this point, you're just casting mono. Is that right?
Yeah, tapered leader and down. And I tend to use a section of floating poly leader, which I integrate into the end of my fly line. So it's actually part of the whole rig permanently with a bit of braided mono. And I use fly tying thread to finish it off and then put some UV head cement over it to seal it all down. So it's a nice straight through thing, doesn't get caught in the guides or anything. And then I use a nail knot from that tapered poly leader to a standard tapered leader and smooth it off with some knot ends and then run it down I cut that tapered leader back to about 1x and I section of 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, etc. And then lengthening pieces right through to the fly. Okay. And that's a really good backcountry rig here.
And how long is your last piece of tippet typically?
The last would be the longest, and that would be probably a meter or so.
Okay. And what size flies? I mean, probably all different sizes, but what's the range?
Yeah, it's funny because yesterday I was out with a local guy and we were fishing on the Motueka River and there were fish on the Hatch and we caught a thumping 6.5 pounder and it was on a size 18, tiny 18 nymph.
Wow, no kidding.
But we can use I've used size 4 stoneflies.
Yeah.
Even bigger actually. And we've got some that I've tied on almost a sea hook. They're a different hook altogether and much more heavy, shanked and everything else, but much more heavy gauge and huge things. There's a friend of mine, a young fella who tied up bunch of these stoneflies with huge lead, the big dumbbell eyes, 4 or 5 wraps of lead in them. They're just absolute bombs to get down in the big, heavy, freestone pools.
Okay.
And you trail it with a smaller nymph and just feel the fly through the run.
Yeah.
And a number of times it'll get absolutely thumped, And it's that system where you put a big fly light through and you feel it and if it taps the bottom, you just bring it up a bit and every 2 or 3 seconds, give it a wee tap.
Yeah. And
the fish will usually, if you're leading through properly, when a fish takes it, it'll stop, of course. And as you're leading through, the rod will load up.
Right.
And you've hooked a fish. So, yeah, to answer your question, it's anywhere from size 20 flies right down to these huge, big, something size 2 or 4.
Wow, no kidding. Right, so my next question is, how in the world do you land 5, 7, 10-pound trout on 5X or 6X leader?
Understanding your rod angles, I think you have to test the boundaries when you're younger. And there's no time like the present to try this as well for anyone. But test the boundaries of what your rig can handle by having maybe eventually bust a few fish off. I think people are too scared to lose fish right off the bat, and they never really test themselves. And so I did, and I also tried things like tying a little bit of rubber tubing to a fence post, put some 5X tippet on there through a normal system I'd normally use for fishing, down to 5X, and then try and break the tippet using the rod correctly.
Yeah.
I urge anyone out there to try this, and it'll demonstrate to you how bloody hard, excuse my language, it is to break tippet using the rod correctly. And when I say using the rod correctly, putting a full bend in the rod and without obviously point loading the rod, but it is very, very hard, almost impossible to break it. So with that in mind, if you use correct angles and you've confidence in your knots and know how much from trial and error how much pressure to put on, it's surprising how much pressure you can put on a really big fish.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, occasionally a fish is going to completely dust you and that's it. That's the reality if there's a lot of snags. And that brings me to the next point. If you identify your water before you start fishing to a particular fish and there's a lot of snags around, but of course, that fish is going to bolt in that first 2 or 3 seconds, regardless of how much pressure you put on, and get straight into a snag.
Yeah.
or around a big rock. So identify that, understand where you need to be really quickly if you hook a fish, and accordingly alter your tippet. It might be saying, well, we have to go to 4x 7-pound fluorocarbon on this fish,
Yeah.
because there's no way I'm going to land it on lighter. But if you've got an open riverbed and less snags around, you can go to 6x 4-pound and still land them in a few minutes if you know what you're doing. I'm not advocating that to people that don't know what they're doing, because we don't want to overstress fish by overplaying them.
Right.
But if you do get to a point where you understand it all, then you can actually go on quite light tippet and still get really efficient about landing big fish early.
What knots are you using to tie your leaders? Surgeon's knots, or what are you using?
Yeah, I use just the simple improved clinch. I have for years. It's never seen me wrong. Blood knot for tying tippet to tippet.
Okay.
It's always been fine. I tend to prefer that over triple surgeons, and that's it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, because it seems like if if something's going to fail, for me, it seems to be the knot before it's the tippet. Not always, but and it sounds like, Mike, as you're coming up on a new section of river, are you sometimes switching up your rig a little bit? Okay, this is a different type of water. Now we're going to put one of those great big number 2 stoneflies on, and we're going to switch things up, and that's how we're going to fish this run. And then we change it again to the next run, or what do you think there?
We're constantly, it's a pain, and the amount of material you go through, in a day's guiding is just,
Really?
get home and went through another spool of, say, 5x today, but that's the reality of it. And
Sure.
if you're being honest and you want to do the right job for your clients, you're constantly changing. And I know me as an angler myself, I'm never the same rig twice, and often if I've landed a big fish, I'm replacing that bottom couple of sections of tippet as well.
Oh, you are? Why's that?
Well, because knots get stressed when you've been putting max pressure on them. Knots get stressed, and I don't want to break a fish off on the next one because I've stressed them out for too long.
Sure.
But you're going for big fish, high stakes. You don't want to lose a fish, because you were lazy on changing your knots.
Interesting. Yeah, boy, I tell you, that's the key, isn't it? You can get lazy. I know I do. There's times when I'm like, man, I should be doing something a little different, but I'm just going to keep fishing my rig as I got it now, and just, especially if you've been out there 6-7 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of people tend to get a little bit, without trying to be so, stereotypical here about people, tend to drift a little bit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And they wander along and they just put the same rig on they normally do. And they said, I might change it, I'll go a little bit deeper. And I always say to my clients that if you want to become a better angler, you treat every single bit of water you're going to fish or every single fish you see with a completely clean slate.
Huh.
And so, right, look at it, analyze it. And one of the greatest tools you can have as a fly angler in New Zealand, I think, is the ability to carefully analyze every situation and go, right, what do I need? And if it means even changing up a rod, if you've got your 5 weight and you look at this and this pull, I'm going to put my 4 weight together because this is really delicate stuff, then you need to do it.
No kidding. And you're doing, you're a backcountry guide, right? So it isn't like you can just run back to the car and grab a different rig, or, you're hauling all this stuff up with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I commonly, in a day's guiding, no matter where I am, backcountry or low country, I'm carrying probably 10 or 12 kilos of gear, food, lunches, 2 to 3 rods, a bunch of reels, spools, and so many fly boxes. I could start a small fly shop.
Yeah, I'll bet.
But I guess I'm one of those guys, I'm a little bit anal about that. I don't want to be missing a chance or an opportunity or a fish for lack of some piece of gear that I should have bought.
Yeah, right. Because you would know better, where your customers might not. That's cool. You mentioned something about your childhood a minute ago. I forget exactly what you said, but I'm kind of curious. How did you get started in fishing?
Yeah, I used to go hunting rabbits and chase after deer and stuff when I was much younger, and these places I'd often look down, see fish in the water and think I'd love to catch those. And so I started spin fishing at about 14, 15 years old. And by the time I was about 17 or so, a friend of my father's had some gear and he left it and said, I might want to try this, you might want to use that because I know he's into trout fishing. And it was an old, very old Fenwick or something, 2-piece fiberglass rod.
Oh, perfect.
And a Wheatley tin of flies, and this old beaten up reel.
It's a nice present.
Yeah. So I practiced a little bit in the backyard, and back then there was no internet, no way of, the only way was to get a book from the local library and read up about how to fly cast. And they showed the loops in these diagrams. I couldn't quite make mine look like that, but I mucked around for a while, and then finally went down to a river called the Hiranui River, which is when I was living in Canterbury at the time. And with my brother, and just on dark, there was a hatch, and I saw a mayfly land on a leaf, and thought, well, maybe that's what the trout are eating. So I went through the box and picked out a similar fly, which I know now is a blue dun, about a size 14, threw it on the water, and the fish obliged by coming up and eating it.
Right there. Oh, you were probably just totally hooked.
Yep, absolutely. And the thing is, I didn't have floats. I didn't know any of that stuff. And so, of course, I threw the fly out and I couldn't see it. I couldn't figure why I couldn't see it, because it was obviously sinking. And then fish was slashing, and I just was lifting up thinking maybe it's mine. And I ended up hooking and landing 4 fish all around the sort of pound and a half to 3 pound mark. Yeah.
Not many guys can say their first couple fish were on an emerger, which is basically what you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was more luck more good luck than good management, but I guess I showed enough instinct to lift at the right times, and I was hooked.
Yeah. Well, and then how did you get from 14-year-old having fun with a box of Wheatley flies to fly fishing guide, backcountry guide?
I carried on for ages and trying to increase my skills, and I was anything I've done in any sport I've ever done, I go 100% into. I absolutely throw myself in the deep end and get almost obsessive about it. And
that's great.
I guess fast forward, probably 5 or 6 years, and I started a signwriting company. And I sort of moved to Nelson and carried that on. And one day, one of my friends said, "Man, you're good at this. Why don't you do this for a job?" And I went, "Ooh, I like the idea of that."
Yeah.
And 22 years ago, it was still early, internet era and all that. So it was hard to promote yourself. We didn't really have the tools we have now. So it was a guy that one of the camper van companies is based in Auckland, a friend of mine, and he started sending a little bit of work down. As people turned up, he'd give them a wee flyer and say, "Go and see this guy." And so that's how I got my work. And it took over very quickly my signwriting business. And I did the two, but I couldn't do justice to signwriting anymore, and I loved the guiding much more, and so I switched over about 10 years ago.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. And you're doing helicopter trips and 4x4 and hiking, and tell us about that.
Yeah, I think that I've always been a really adventurous angler, and that as I sort of got into starting to the early part of the social media part of it, and making videos and things, and having a YouTube channel and everything else, that's what I sort of portrayed as what I did. And I think, so as a backcountry guide, I become, I guess, known as the backcountry dude, And so people would contact me asking me to do that sort of stuff. And so that's what I ended up doing a lot of.
Right. Well, I'm curious because there are a ton of lodges in New Zealand. And, what I've heard is that a lot of times those guides, those fish are like their pets, and they go to the same places and those rivers just get pounded. I'm sure it's not all like that. But I'm guessing as a backcountry guide, you've got a lot of flexibility to go to some places that maybe people haven't really been fishing much that year.
Yeah, I think the lodges, and personally, I've never been such a fan of lodges just simply because they put a lot of pressure in that one area.
Yeah,
it's the order of things. That's the way it works, But I think with lodges, you're tied to fishing from the lodge that day, either a helicopter for a day or normally just locally within an hour and a half drive. And with me, I can do overnight trips. And so I can get way, way back, and I can stay for 2, 3, 4 days.
Cool.
With a client. So that's and then it's a lot of walking. It's setting up tents, it's setting up your campsite, and all those little peripheral things that I think add so much to your day's fishing or your fishing trip.
Yeah.
And I think that's my point of difference between what I do in a lodge, for example, is just the fact that it's an immersive experience that lasts for as long as you want. And if someone books me for a week or 2 weeks, then we'll do a caravan road trip. So I've got a large caravan, and we can base ourselves out of a caravan park next to a lake, do some lake fishing. Then we can leave the caravan at the caravan park and take off in the 4x4 and go way up into a valley somewhere and spend 2 or 3 nights there.
Yeah.
I can get on the sat phone if the client decides he wants to. He's got the disposable income to afford a helicopter, and we'll head up. We'll fly out, so we can do anything basically.
So you'll have a helicopter meet you way up into the backcountry and then take you even farther for a day?
Yep. Depends. It's anything. Basically, there's nothing outside of someone's ability to be able to fund it.
Right. I think you told me before the show that they're time poor and cash rich. So let's get in a helicopter.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like and I think the important thing to add there is there's no lack of effort once you get there. It's just because, as you said, people haven't got the time to be spending a day and a half to 2 days just to walk into somewhere, and they can take 2 days of hiking with a massive pack just to get the fishing, and then you've got to do the fishing and go further, and then find a way to get out. Logistically, it's a bit of a nightmare in the amount of gear you can carry. So it's less about the hard work and about the logistics. Helicopter can take all the gear for you, drop it off, and you still do a lot of work, a lot of walking. Yeah.
And so as clients call you, I imagine there's quite a conversation you need to have with somebody, right? So do you realize that this is what we're talking about doing, and what kind of shape are you in?
Yeah, that's right. And that's a big question. And my fit is not someone else's fit. So we've got to ask them. And my wife's very good at sending, a whole list of things. And can you please answer these as honestly as possible about your fitness? Because we can tailor it to you, because we can have anything from, climbing over car-shaped boulders, most of the day to get to the next pool, or run, going up around bluffs and dropping into the river again, to just meandering, tussocky, bushline streams. So what do you think suits you? What do you want to do? What's your vision of your trip? And then we've really got to be careful about listening very carefully to exactly what they want and what they can handle. It's really important.
Exactly. Oh, that's neat. Well, with all your years of guiding, Mike, I'm wondering if you've got a story or two of an epic trip you took, or an epic fish or something.
There's one funny one. One of my favourite clients, I've got a couple. One is a Danish guy. Guy's name's Christian Overson. He's a lovely bloke, big, beefy, ex-army guy. Loveliest guy I'll ever meet. And after 10 years, I'd been guiding him, and he's a very skilled angler. I said to him, "Look, do you want to come and do opening with me?" And he said, "Oh, would I? I'd love that." So he come over and we did it. And I said, "Look, it's just you and me fishing together. It's just my way of saying thanks for all the support of my business over the years." So we got there and we did that trip. It was great. I did a YouTube clip of it. It's a 45-minute clip or something of our trip. And the following season, when he turned up for me to guide him, and we did a helicopter trip into the backcountry into this really cool river, and there was a few mice fish around. And we landed, and he said, "Oh, by the way, we're fishing together on the trip." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yep, mate, that's it." I said, I said, "No, what I did for you on that last one was just, to thank you. You don't have to thank me back." He said, "No, that's what I want to do." I said, "Okay." So we made the rules that we would fish for 3 days.
Okay. So he wanted you to fish too.
Yep. You see, that's his gift back was for us to fish together, even though he was paying for it.
That's cool. That's awesome.
And so we fished the first couple of days, and we caught even numbers of fish. But we got into the really good stuff where the bigger fish were on the last day. And as it turned out, I think he started off with a 9.5 on a dry fly. And then I caught like a 7 on a dry fly. And then went through the day, and we went, whatever fish we saw, no matter what they were doing, that was the golden rule. Even if it was sitting at the edge doing nothing, that was your fish. And if you couldn't catch it, it was the next person's, it was your mate's choice, his chance. So after catching this big fish on a dry early, and I caught a reasonable one, the only other fish he caught was about 4.5 pounds. And I went, if I can remember exactly remember, it was something like 10.5 pound, 11 pound, 11.5, 10 3/4, and one other. There was like 5 double-figure fish in the time he caught. I just happened to be in line with the ones that were feeding well and managed to get the fly in the right place and catch them.
Like it was your turn. You had the bigger fish on your turn, it sounds like.
Yeah, every time it's my turn, that was a really good opportunity. Every time it was his turn, it wasn't. And he still doesn't let me forget it to this day.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. The numbers you're throwing out there, I mean, like 10 pounds. I don't think I've seen a 10-pound trout, much less had one on the end of my line. It's mind-boggling. I can't even imagine on a 5X tippet even.
Yeah, I tell you what, you talk about pinnacles in sport, like, I don't know, scoring, multiple touchdowns in a game of American football.
Right.
Or in cricket, scoring 100 runs a century, or scoring a hat trick of goals in soccer. They're all pinnacles. The pinnacle in fly fishing in New Zealand is catching a double figure fish on a dry fly.
Okay.
And I made these two movies back to back years about the mouse fish. We tried in the second movie, we're trying to catch see if there's still big mice fish around in the following season. And I actually caught on a cicada pattern. I caught about 11-pound brown on a dry fly, and to catch it on film was just incredible. So they're pinnacle moments. And you're, no matter how many double figure fish I've caught over the years, these trophy fish, it's still, once you hook them and you realise your heart is thumping out of your chest, and once you finally slide the net under them and you see them and you go, that's a trophy, you almost every time just let out a huge whoop. It's hard to describe.
Doesn't get old. And you said something about a weigh net. I don't own one of those. I don't think I need a weigh net. But is that a net that's got a scale in it?
Yeah, there's a scale in the handle. There's a company here called McLean weigh nets. They're quite big around the world now, and they
That's cool.
have they're really good lightweight nets, and they got a weigh scale in the handle.
Yeah. I don't think I need that. Most of my fish are under 2 pounds, I'm pretty sure, where I'm fishing. And I'm talking Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado. I go to some nice places, but we just don't, we don't see fish like that. I'm sure they're in there. There's some big fish on the Osaba River in Michigan. You can get them on the hex hatch, like from 11 to 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
From a Osaba canoe, but not like, 26 inch. Well, you can. There's some big fish up there in different fisheries, I'm sure. But what you're talking about, where you can have multiple shots during the day, sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, obviously the caveat to all that is you have to generally have, to get a lot of double figure fish in a season, you have to have, the introduced food, and in this case, mice. If you don't have the mice, you're just not going to catch them.
Okay.
In those numbers, but and we have enough mice seasons lately, and it seems like every 3 years, almost lately, there's been mouse years to some degree, and if you know where they are, you can catch them.
That's cool. What's your personal best?
Actually, probably the one I caught on film, and I don't know because I got digital scales, like the luggage ones you use for weighing your gear when you're traveling overseas.
Yeah.
I got one of those weigh scale things I carry with me in a mouse year, and the batteries run out, and I couldn't.
Oh, did it?
They couldn't get it to run. It was, when I pulled it out of my pack, it was just a red light showing. I thought that's odd because it only, that shouldn't be on constantly, and I couldn't figure it. And I think it was basically a warning light saying the batteries are out, and then it just went off, and it wouldn't register at all.
Oh,
so
my
I don't
gosh.
know. It bombed out the 40, but the guy I was with fishing, he's caught a lot of double figure fish as well, and he was adamant it was 20 pound, but
Who knows?
I think it was, it was more my sort of 18, but that would be my biggest. I think my biggest I've ever weighed was 17 and a quarter before that.
That's a monster. How long was that big fish that you couldn't weigh?
Yeah, well, it's interesting too because I never carry. Well, I used to carry a tape because American clients, you guys tend to go on length, like an 18-inch or 22-inch or whatever. But we just go on weight. So I don't know, but I think this fish was probably 32 plus inches long, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it sounds like a steelhead or a salmon to me, but it's amazing. We're talking about brown trout.
And it was in a tiny stream too, by the way, just to add to that. It was in a
really
very tiny little stream, yeah, and way up in the middle of nowhere.
Like what tiny do you? Do you guys do cubic feet per second, or what's tiny? Give us a sense of what that means. How far across is it?
The average size would be 6 feet, 5 feet.
Oh, really small. Okay. That's a small stream to catch a fish like that. And you got this on video?
Yep.
Oh, no kidding.
We do put out on video called the Trophy Quest, Insight the Trophy Quest.
Okay, folks, there you go.
Yeah, and that's we catch something like about 9 or 10 double figure fish. We had 6 days to try and each of us to try and catch double figure fish.
Okay.
Me and a few friends, and we all caught double figure fish, and we ended up, I think, with 9 on film. Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, I've looked at some. You sent me some links, and folks, you got to go out and check this out. You're not going to believe it. I mean, honestly, these are some of the most amazing fish I've ever seen. And Mike sent me a bunch of pictures too that I'll be posting on our Facebook, Instagram pages of some pretty amazing fish, right? And it's not just like one or two of these. You know, Mike is catching a lot of these fish, as he's been saying. Mike, I'm curious, as we're kind of winding down here, do you have, like seasons in terms of like hatches, what comes off in the early spring and then the summer and the fall? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Well, I think the first thing to note is we're not really, New Zealand per se isn't a hatch-driven fishery. It's not. We don't. I mean, I certainly know in the States a lot of, you can almost set your watch to certain hatches, whether it's tricos or blue-winged olives or whatever. So we have a few, like down south, the Mataura River, way down deep, the south bottom of the South Island, is a wonderful hatch-driven fishery, but they're very few and far between. So they're mainly sort of more opportunistic feeders, and there will be hatches during the day, but that's just of whatever. You won't be able to pick what it is.
Oh, really?
You just have to look at what's coming off the water. If some caddis are hatching, or there's even a few stoneflies might be, or whatever mayfly species, and you've got to guess, try and find one, or just watch them fly past and try and figure which one they are.
Yeah.
And then match the hatch to that. And obviously, the better you are at identifying your insects, the better you're going to be succeeding in catching them.
So when you show up in the morning and you come to a stream, like what's going through your mind in terms of what you're going to tie on?
I think just going back a step, I think you have to have a large selection of fairly specific flies to go along with your sort of generic flies here.
Yeah.
Because I've seen backcountry fish get very, very specific on one, not even just I guess like in the States, on a specific size, color, shape, and everything of fly.
Yeah.
And so I carry, commonly about 8 fly boxes with me when I'm guiding.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Completely double leaf things, completely stacked with flies. And it might be, and if there's not much hatching and it's only an in the drift thing, which can often happen here, where there's something that, there might be a particular clinging mayfly, for example, that are getting dislodged every now and then, and the fish are just whipping out and taking them every now and then.
Yeah.
You've got to guess, and you've got to know, based on your knowledge of that river, what's likely to be coming down, and then go through the fly box a little bit till you get it right.
Okay. And then will these fish typically allow you to take a couple of shots at them and change up flies and try again?
Yeah, only if you do everything right. And sometimes even when you do everything right, you felt like you've put every cast perfectly, it's drifted perfectly through, they might tolerate 2 or 3 changes and then just stiffen up anyway.
Right.
Depends on the fish on the day.
Yeah. But you do have like mayflies and caddisflies and stoneflies.
We have, I think the main 4 species are, your mayflies, your caddisflies, stoneflies, and midges.
Midges, yeah.
But there are a lot of, especially in the still waters, and the lower reaches, you get a lot of midge and margins, stuff like that. But it's mainly caddis and mayflies that we sort of focus on. But there are a really, really large parts of the diet, especially of upland fisheries, is terrestrial.
Okay.
And
sure.
And so we have the brown beetle hatch, which will start, and go on for quite a few months from about November, and we get green beetles will start about December. We call them the green manuka beetle, which is a particular tree we have here, and they particularly like those. But so you get those beetles, and I fish, the dry fly beetles, but also I have patterns. So I sink the beetles down below the film because a lot of them get waterlogged and
right
are in the sort of mid column. But there's also when we have the cicadas every year. So I know in the States you have the cicadas there's a 16-year wait for each hatch or something.
Yeah, right.
Our cicadas are every single year, and there's quite a few different species, and so that's a major part, anywhere from about December through till March. depending on where you are and how long the season goes. But these cicadas will reach a peak, start about December, and reach a peak at about end of January, beginning of February, and then they'll taper off around March. And these are large. These are size 6.
Oh, wow.
Big bug. Yeah.
Yeah. Do trout seem to really key in on cicadas?
Yes. Well, just simply they're such a big food item, and there's so many of them, and it suddenly makes a lot of people that don't fish much, if they're going to fish at all, they'll fish when the cicada hatches out, because they can, shorten up their leaders, slap the fly in the water down the middle of a run, and expect a fish to find the fly. The pinpoint part of it goes out the window a little bit, and it's much easier for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think you were telling me, I can't remember if it was before the show, but that you got to really present that fly delicately. But with a cicada, you do want it to splat on the surface.
Yep. Bit of a haul, on your final cast, haul it and slap it, and get it on the water fast and hard, because that's how they're very clumsy flyers, and they hit the water a lot because they just,
Yeah.
dumb, for want of the word, and they just splat on the surface, and then, and that's what the trout will key in on. And so what we tend to do is, if you've got a sighted fish, and they're likely to be eating cicadas, is I don't lead the fish over the top like a lot of people do. I put one about 1 meter out to the side towards the faster water, because they feel that. They always feel it, and they always see it, and so it allows them. It's almost like ringing a dinner bell. You don't want to ring it in their face. You want to ring it slightly more distantly, so they go, "Oh, where is it?" And then when they head over to where the splat was, and then they see that imprint in the film, they've already convinced themselves, yes, that's going to be what I want. Yes, it is, and then they eat it. If you choke them up too much, you choke up on them, they tend to maybe get a little bit spooky as the season goes on.
Right. And are you trying to cast off to the side so that your leader is not going over the top of the fish?
I think that's less important, but yeah, that can be an element too, for sure. But it's more just that I just don't want it, if a lot of people throw cicada straight over fish, and I think they can get a bit spooked. Leader can be part of it, but also it's just they don't like being jammed up on like that. Because I don't think in the course of a day, many cicadas are going to land straight on top of the fish.
Right.
Most of them are going to be coming down in the faster water, and so put it out where most of their food comes is the best option.
Okay. What's your favorite caddis pattern?
Favorite caddis?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, we caught a fish with my client yesterday on a horn case caddis, actually, and that's a good little pattern. Pretty simple, little bead.
Huh.
Yep. Horny case. They're sort of a browny down to olivey to slightly greeny coloured case caddis.
Okay.
And the pattern with a little bit of, I use black possum fur out of the top, coming out by the bead, just representative of little black legs as they're starting to emerge out of the case. And you can either float them, have them with a foam on top and float them in the film, or you can trail them behind another fly, and they work really well.
Okay. Do things like, an Adams work down there?
A straight parachute or straight Adams?
Yeah, just like a parachute Adams, standard fly, tractor fly. Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think they get used a huge amount here. I've tended over the last 5 years to go away from the parachutes unless I think they're actually targeting the in the film emerger, which a parachute's quite good for because they sit down in the film. I tend to go maybe a straight Adams, which is the upright winged dry fly, a bit, because I think less people use them, depending on what I see, of course. But if it's a dun hatch, I'll sit them as they're sitting on the film as a dun. Yeah, and I think that maybe it just makes a little bit of a difference in success.
Yeah. Does it make, if you're doing helicopter fishing, can you get to a place where, the fly selection isn't as important? They've not seen as many flies?
Yeah, to a degree. But I mean, as soon as you start thinking that, they'll change the game on you and be very very fixed on what they want to eat. So every day is different. But in general terms, yeah, they are more opportunistic. So if you put a fly presented in the right place and looks good, they should eat it.
Right. As I was getting ready for this interview, I read that drab flies tend to do a little better than sparkly flies in New Zealand. Is that true?
Look, it is. As a general rule of thumb, absolutely. I mean, I have all of mine are tied with dull beads, even the beads inside the body, and a wrap over the back. And probably down in sizes too. There's a particular swimming mayfly that I loved when I fish. It's almost my go-to pattern, called an Examilitis. It's a mottled grey back with an olive underside, and this particular tail that comes with a black strip through it. And the pattern I've actually, a good mate of mine, Hans Kreuer, who's a German, naturally lives here now, who guides for us. It was his pattern originally, and I've just tweaked it to how I like it. And that in freestone backcountry rivers, because fish don't, it's my own pattern. It's a very specific pattern. I'm pretty confident most times I throw them the fish, as long as they present it right, the fish will eat it.
Yeah, yeah, oh, that's amazing. Well, what advice would you give people from North America coming to New Zealand?
Hire a guide.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's the first one. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, I'm pretty booked for the coming season. We do have a handful of amazing guides that have still got time. I do have a few days here and there if the right person approaches at the right time. But I'm saying that because if it's me or someone else, it just shaves a huge amount of trial and error, and usually emphasis on the error, and wasting can be weeks of time trying to nail in how we do it. Because there are a lot of differences, leader lengths and approaches, and understanding when a trout's stiffened up. Because it's so visual here, you can see everything, and you get cues from the fish. You say, look, he's not happy anymore. We'll leave him alone. And we'll move on to the next. It's knowing when to move on. A cool little story about a French guy I saw off a bank, one of our backcountry rivers, and I was with my client. We watched him for a few minutes, and I said, that fish. I watched the first two casts, and the fish slowed down, and then he stiffened, and the guy carried on for about the next 10 minutes. And I finally wandered down and said to him, mate, that fish is spooked. He said, no, he's still there. I said, yeah, he's there, geez. But he's spooked. He's not happy anymore. He's not going to feed. What was he doing when you first got here? And he said, oh yeah, he's moving. No, he's not. I said, yeah, you won't catch him.
I interviewed a guy in the Bow River in Calgary, and he called it the fish's body language, and I thought that was a pretty cool way to think about it.
Absolutely, and there's even a thing where if you come across a fish and you see the dorsal fin just tilted a bit, don't even bother casting. They're literally asleep.
Say it again, the dorsal fin tilted. You mean left to right?
Yeah, either way, yeah, like that, yes. It's down and it's off. It usually means everything's relaxed so much, they've nestled in. There's no current they have to weave or fight against. They've actually found a bit where the current's holding them completely there, and they even just tilt slightly. And when you see them like that, don't bother.
I've never heard of that. I'll have to look for that. Well, if I get to see a big fish like that. All right. Well, I've got a couple more questions. One is I'm curious, all your guiding and, dealing with your clients, like what's this all about for you, Mike? Like why fish? What have you learned about life, from guiding and fishing?
Look, I love guiding and I love it as much now as I did 22 years ago when I nervously got into it. It's because the people you meet are like-minded people. They've come across from the other side of the world to fish here. I mean, and so we've got everything in common instantly. And so 9 times out of 10, or almost even 99 times out of 100, you just get into great conversations. You feel like you're kindred spirits.
Yeah.
And you're seeing these people at their very best because they're happy. They've left all the worries of the world behind them. And so they're happy, and that washes off on you and makes you happy. And you have great conversations, you have great fishing. Even a poor fishing day, you still get a lot of really positive things out of it. And the backdrops to what you do are, as I alluded to earlier, mind-numbingly good. It's stuff that you see, well, I used to say, on the biscuit tin lids. Yeah. The stuff we used to buy the biscuits in the big tins. And they had these amazing photos on the front of them.
Right, sure, yeah.
It's probably going back a long way, but showing my age there. But it's that sort of country, and you can't beat that. And it is an office.
It's your office,
it
right?
Get better.
That's what you get to do every day.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that's really cool. I tell you what, any of you folks thinking about being a guide, I've not been a guide, but I think Mike's got it right here. What a great concept. So, all right, last question. I'm curious, as people are coming to fish with you, what are some great spots they need to check out as far as places to go eat at the end of a trip? You got some wineries too, don't you?
Yeah, there's like this. I'm just trying to think of in which order I'd name them. If you finish and you want, for example, a guy's listening and he wants to bring his wife and family, I mean, there's adventure stuff. You can go as adventurous as you want. You can jump off a bridge with a bungee cord wrapped around your ankles. You can go on these canyons with these jet boats that go at frightening speeds and skim the walls. You know, the shot over jet down south's famous for it. We're an adventure place. We're one of the adventure capitals of the world in New Zealand. We're crazy. But then you've got the really quiet stuff, you know, where you can go to visit some world-class vineyards. You know, we've got pristine, wonderful beaches not far from Nelson, actually, in Kaiteriteri National Park. There's a Kaiteriteri Beach, which is just white sand, and the water's so clean. It's just like a postcard.
Huh.
You know, so I think New Zealand has everything from alpine mountains to, you know, to pristine beaches and anything in between, and so diverse from top to bottom. You could spend 3 or 4 months here and still feel like when you got home, you'd missed out on a lot.
Yeah. I've traveled with people from New Zealand before. Some of the nicest people I've ever met anywhere were my friends from New Zealand. This is back in the 1980s, folks, so I am showing my age. But I traveled with a bunch of folks in Europe from New Zealand and just absolutely thought they were fantastic. So lots of reasons to go down to New Zealand. Fishing, people, adventure. Mike, how can people get in touch with you, and where can they check out your videos?
Okay, Latitude Guiding. Just look up Latitude Guiding if they want to find me. So it's www.latitudeguiding.co.nz website. And my wife runs a team of guides as well, and she does a wonderful job. She's the best at it, and she's an absolute champion. And that's Southern Latitude Guides. So look either of those two up, and you'll find us. And my YouTube channel, if you want people want to check out some world-class fly fishing for big brown trout, my YouTube channel is Mike Fisher, and that is MikeFsher.
Okay.
And also on Vimeo, under Mike Fisher as well on Vimeo. If they want to check out those 2 pay-per-view movies, which are really well worth it, with huge amount of really, really good praise, actually. So.
Okay. And you're on Instagram and Facebook too?
Yep. Instagram under Mike Fisher, the same. And yeah, on Facebook, just under Mike Kirkpatrick, Latitude Guiding.
Perfect. All right. Well, I hope you get some trips from this, and hope some people make the trip down there. Mike, thanks so much for being on the show. Loved having you.
Oh, it's been great talking, Steve.
Yeah, you bet. I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And folks, thank you for listening. We'll be sure to post Mike's info, his contact info on the Destination English show notes, and these incredible pictures he's sent me on Facebook and Instagram. You can always DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shaig50@gmail.com. And hey, if you like the show, please let a buddy know. As always, our music is by A Brother's Fountain. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see. Yeah.